Zara Williams never imagined that a single slip of her finger could change everything. She had stayed late at the office, juggling spreadsheets, emails, and the kind of deadlines that made her head spin. Exhausted but determined, she finally sank into her chair, letting her phone slip into speaker mode while venting about her chaotic day to her best friend. "I swear, sometimes I feel like they expect me to do the impossible," she said, laughing nervously. Her voice echoed slightly in the nearly empty office. "And of course they never even notice the little things I actually do." What she didn't notice was the silent presence at the other end. Ji-hoon Park, the enigmatic CEO she worked for, had been walking past her desk, phone in hand, calling her assistant. A wrong connection, a wrong timing, and suddenly he could hear every word. For a moment, Zara rambled on, completely unaware that her boss was listening, his expression unreadable. There was a pause, then the faintest chuckle, smooth and controlled, that made her stop mid-sentence. Her eyes widened as realization dawned. He hadn't hung up. Panic and embarrassment flooded her. She hurried to grab the phone, fumbling with it as she stammered, I didn't mean." Ji-hoon, however, didn't scold her. Instead, he left a simple, cryptic message that made her heart skip. "See you tomorrow." Zara stared at the screen, cheeks burning, mind racing. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain. Her life, quiet and predictable until now, had just shifted in a way she couldn't ignore. The next morning, Zara walked into the office with a mix of dread and curiosity. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floors, each step a reminder that she had no idea how Ji-hoon would act after overhearing her late-night vent. Her co-workers greeted her as usual, oblivious to the storm swirling in her mind. She reached her desk, trying to act normal, but her fingers trembled slightly as she opened her laptop. Every notification, every message, felt like a countdown to an encounter she both feared and secretly anticipated. Then Ji-hoon appeared. His presence filled the room, commanding attention without a single word. Zara froze for a heartbeat, studying him carefully. He looked calm, polished, and intimidating as ever, but there was a softness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Zara," he said, his voice low but steady. It wasn't accusatory, it wasn't judgmental. It was neutral, yet somehow warmer than she expected. "Good morning, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Throughout the day, their interactions were polite but loaded with unspoken tension. Ji-hoon observed quietly, often appearing when Zara least expected it, his presence oddly reassuring. She began to notice the small gestures, the way he ensured her work was noticed, the way he subtly encouraged her to speak up during meetings. Later, in the privacy of an empty conference room, she accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. Before she could even apologize, Ji-hoon bent down, helping her gather them. Their hands brushed briefly. "Don't worry," he said softly, giving her a reassuring smile. Without thinking, Zara instinctively hugged him, a quick, grateful gesture. It was brief, yet in that moment, both felt a spark of connection neither could deny. And just like that, the first thread of trust and curiosity between them had been woven. Late nights had a way of revealing sides of people no one usually saw. For Zara, it was the quiet hum of the office after everyone had gone home. She stayed behind, reviewing a presentation when the door clicked softly. She looked up to find Ji-hoon standing there, his expression calm, almost thoughtful. "I thought I'd check in," he said, voice low enough that it didn't echo across the empty space. "You've been working late a lot lately." Zara blinked, unsure if she should be embarrassed or relieved. "I just want to make sure everything is perfect," she admitted. There was a weight in her chest, an unspoken tension that she hadn't realized she carried. Ji-hoon pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "You don't have to do it alone," he said simply, his eyes meeting hers. It wasn't a command, it was an offer of support, and it made her heart tighten unexpectedly. What started as casual conversation soon turned into something deeper. They shared stories about their childhoods, the small dreams they'd nurtured quietly, the struggles they faced. Ji-hoon spoke of family expectations and responsibilities he rarely disclosed to anyone, while Zara talked about her aspirations and the challenges of proving herself in a demanding environment. With every shared word, the space between them seemed to shrink. The tension was no longer just curiosity or embarrassment, it had transformed into mutual respect, empathy, and a tentative trust. By the time they noticed the hour, the office was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Ji-hoon stood, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Good work tonight," he said softly. Zara hesitated, then leaned in, giving him a brief hug. It was quiet, comforting, and unspoken in its meaning. A silent acknowledgement that they were no longer strangers, but allies in something far more personal. Zara had always prided herself on handling challenges on her own. But that morning, the weight of deadlines and office politics pressed heavier than usual. She sighed as she stared at the endless emails piling up, feeling the familiar knot of frustration tighten in her chest. Unbeknownst to her, Ji-hoon had noticed. From across the room, he observed how she navigated every interaction with precision, yet how her eyes betrayed fatigue and stress. Instead of reprimanding or ignoring, he chose something unexpected, a quiet, subtle gesture of support. During a tense meeting, when a colleague tried to undermine Zara's proposal, Ji-hoon spoke up, not with authority, but with measured calm that gave her words the space to shine. His intervention was minimal, almost invisible, yet it shifted the room's energy entirely. Zara, caught off guard, gave him a small, grateful glance, her heart fluttering in surprise. Later, as she returned to her desk, Ji-hoon appeared again, handing her a cup of coffee. "You've earned this," he said softly. It wasn't charity, it was acknowledgement. It was his way of telling her that he saw her effort, her perseverance. Zara's lips curved into a tentative smile. Without thinking, she offered him a hug, a quick, sincere embrace of gratitude. Ji-hoon didn't hesitate. He returned it with the same quiet warmth, a silent promise that she wasn't alone. Afterward, she sat back in her chair, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. It wasn't just the coffee, it was the realization that someone as formidable as Ji-hoon, was rooting for her. Someone who understood her in ways most never would. And in that brief, unexpected hug, a deeper connection had been forged. One built on trust, respect, and the unspoken promise that tomorrow might bring something even more extraordinary. When Ji-hoon invited Zara to dinner, she almost laughed at the thought. "It's for work," he had said casually, but the way he looked at her left no doubt, it wasn't just business. Her mind raced with possibilities and nerves tangled with curiosity. That evening she found herself entering a quiet, elegant restaurant, the warm lighting softening the edges of her anxiety. Ji-hoon was already there, seated at a corner table with a reserved calm that made her pulse quicken. He greeted her with a nod and a smile that felt unexpectedly personal, like a secret shared between them. Over dinner, conversation flowed effortlessly. Ji-hoon asked about her life outside the office, her family, her hobbies, even the small joys she rarely spoke of. Zara, in turn, found herself laughing more freely than she had in months, sharing stories that felt too personal for casual office chatter. There was a gentle ease between them, a rhythm that made the world outside the restaurant fade. They weren't boss and assistant tonight. They were two people discovering each other's quiet corners, the parts often hidden behind professionalism and responsibility. As dessert arrived, Zara noticed the way Ji-hoon listened, fully present, hanging on to every word. It was rare, this kind of attention, and it left her feeling seen in a way she hadn't expected. When the evening came to an end, the walk back to the car was filled with soft smiles and shy glances. Without thinking, Zara leaned into a hug, brief but lingering enough to feel meaningful. Ji-hoon held her gently, returning the warmth, the connection, the unspoken promise that this night was the beginning of something neither of them could ignore. As she drove home, her mind replayed the evening over and over. For the first time in a long time, she felt anticipation instead of worry, an eager curiosity about what tomorrow might bring. The office buzzed with whispers as it always did, but today they carried a sharper edge. Zara overheard fragments, rumors about Ji-hoon's reputation, the kind of stories that made her stomach twist. She had known he was powerful, influential even, but hearing the murmurs made her question what she thought she knew. All day, she felt a quiet unease settle over her. Meetings became a blur, emails a distraction she couldn't focus on. She tried to push the thoughts away, reminding herself that Ji-hoon had always been professional with her, respectful even, despite the accidental late-night call that had started everything. It was during a rare quiet moment, when she found herself alone in the lounge, that Ji-hoon appeared. His presence was steady, grounding, like a lighthouse cutting through the fog of doubt. "I heard," he began softly as if reading her mind. "Don't let them affect how you see me or yourself." Zara looked up, startled. His gaze was calm, unwavering, filled with sincerity she couldn't ignore. For a long moment she said nothing, letting his words settle over her like a shield. "You trust me, right?" he asked, not demanding, just quietly seeking. She nodded, the knot in her chest loosening slightly. Without thinking, she stepped forward and hugged him. It was a hug full of relief, of trust, of unspoken acknowledgement that despite the outside noise, they had each other's back. Ji-hoon held her gently, just long enough to let her know that she was safe, that she mattered, that she wasn't alone in facing the world. When they pulled back, a subtle shift had occurred. Zara felt a newfound courage, a quiet strength reinforced by his reassurance. And Ji-hoon, for all his authority and reputation, seemed just as affected. His careful exterior softened by the trust she had placed in him. The tension of the office had faded, replaced by the quiet certainty that, together, they could face anything. By Friday afternoon, the weight of the week had left both Zara and Ji-hoon craving a break. To her surprise, Ji-hoon suggested a weekend outing, framing it as a work recharge. Zara hesitated, then agreed, curious about what he had planned. The morning of their excursion, the city of Seoul stretched out before them in the soft glow of dawn. They wandered through quiet streets, sampled street food, and laughed over small, silly mishaps that made the world feel lighter than it had in months. For Zara, it was the first time she had experienced Ji-hoon outside the office, a man both commanding and unexpectedly playful. They found themselves in a small park overlooking the Han River. Ji-hoon leaned against the railing watching the water ripple, while Zara spoke about dreams she rarely shared. He listened intently, nodding thoughtfully, never interrupting, never judging. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "it feels like the world expects us to carry more than we can. But maybe, it's the little moments like this that matter the most." Zara smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't expected. She took a hesitant step forward and hugged him, a hug that lingered longer than before. It wasn't just gratitude, it was comfort, a mutual understanding that they were carving out a space for themselves in the midst of chaos. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, they sat side by side, shoulders touching, sharing quiet laughter and gentle conversation. No words could fully capture the connection forming between them, the subtle recognition that this weekend wasn't just an escape from work, it was the beginning of something far more meaningful. By the time they returned to the city lights, Zara felt an unspoken promise in the air: trust, closeness, and the possibility of a future built together. It was late evening when Zara found herself alone in the quiet office again, finishing the last of her reports. The hum of the city outside was soft, a gentle reminder that the world continued beyond deadlines and responsibilities. She didn't expect Ji-hoon to appear, but there he was, standing in the doorway with a quiet, almost hesitant smile. "I thought I'd check if you were okay," he said, stepping closer. There was a vulnerability in his tone that caught her off guard. Zara looked up, her heart skipping. I think so," she admitted. "Just tired, I guess." He nodded, but his gaze lingered, and in it she saw something she hadn't expected: curiosity, care, and a depth of feeling he rarely let anyone see. "Zara," he began softly, "I can't stop thinking about us. About how much I've come to care about you." Her breath caught. The words were gentle, unassuming, yet they carried a weight that made her chest tighten. "Do I feel the same," she whispered, realizing that what had started as respect and curiosity had grown into something far more profound. Neither of them moved to kiss, nor did they need to. Instead, Zara stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him in a long, comforting hug. Ji-hoon returned it naturally, holding her close with a tenderness that said everything words could not. In that quiet moment, the office walls seemed to disappear. The boundaries of boss and assistant, work and personal, melted away, leaving just two people who had found a rare, precious connection. When they finally stepped back, both were smiling softly, hearts quietly racing. There was no rush, no pressure, just the understanding that their feelings were real, mutual, and worth protecting. And for the first time, they both allowed themselves to imagine a future together, one built on trust, care, and the slow-burning warmth of love. Zara was packing up her things for the day when her phone buzzed with an unexpected message, one that left her chest tightening. It was vague, but the implication was clear. Something connected to Ji-hoon's world had reached her indirectly, and it unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to focus on leaving, but the thought of danger hovering close to someone she cared about made her heart race. Before she could fully process it, Ji-hoon appeared, calm and composed, yet sharp with awareness. "You don't need to worry," he said firmly but gently, reading the tension in her posture. "I've taken care of it." Zara stared at him, unsure if relief or fear came first. "Are you safe?" she asked softly, the words almost trembling. He stepped closer, closing the small distance between them, and offered her a reassuring smile. "Always. And you are too. I won't let anything happen to you." Before she could respond, Zara instinctively reached out and hugged him. It was a hug filled with gratitude, relief, and trust, a silent acknowledgement that she felt protected and cared for in a way she hadn't known before. Ji-hoon returned it, strong yet gentle, as if the embrace itself could convey everything words couldn't. For a long moment they stayed like that, holding on to the quiet strength they had found in each other. The office around them seemed to fade, leaving only two hearts connected by trust and unspoken understanding. When they finally stepped back, Zara felt a sense of calm she hadn't known all week. Jihoon's presence, his protection, and the simple act of holding each other had reminded her that they weren't just colleagues. They were partners, emotionally and quietly, in facing the world together. And in that realization, both of them understood something powerful. Love wasn't always loud. Sometimes, it was a steady, unwavering hug in the middle of chaos. The office was quiet, the city outside bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon. For Zara, the past weeks felt like a whirlwind: confusion, laughter, late-night talks, and the slow, steady realization of something deeper between her and Jihoon. Today there were no distractions, no deadlines, just the two of them lingering in the private corner of the office. Jihoon's eyes held that familiar warmth, the one that had drawn her in from the very first accidental call. "Zara," he said softly, stepping closer, "I've tried to hide it, to keep things professional, but I can't anymore. I care about you, more than just work, more than just friendship. I want us to be us." Her heart swelled. She had felt it too, the pull, the connection, the quiet comfort of his presence. "Jihoon," she whispered, "I feel the same. I've never felt this understood, this safe, this happy." Words were enough for a moment, but then instinct took over. They hugged, long, slow, and meaningful. It was more than just comfort, it was a promise. A promise that they would face the world together, that trust and care would guide them through every challenge. When they finally stepped back, smiles lingered, fingers brushed, and eyes met with a shared understanding. This was the start of something lasting. Their journey hadn't been fast or easy, but it had been real, tender, and theirs. As Zara left the office that evening, she glanced back at Jihoon and felt a quiet joy that couldn't be contained. She knew their story was just beginning, a story of trust, warmth, and a love that would grow every day.